All right, so we're diving into foam rubber mixing today.
Really interesting stuff.
Yeah, and we're going to try to help you prep for a job interview in this field.
Exactly.
And we've got some great RoleCatcher intel to help us out with that.
Definitely.
Okay, so let's just jump right in. One of the first questions you might get in an interview like this is, tell us about your experience working with foam rubber.
Right. And you might be thinking, well, I've never actually worked with foam rubber.
Exactly.
So what do I say?
Yeah.
And the key here is to think about any experience you have that might be even a little bit related.
Oh.
So did you ever help a friend fix a couch cushion? Or maybe you did some kind of DIY project that involved foam.
Right.
Anything like that shows that you at least have some understanding of what foam rubber is and how to handle it.
Okay, I see.
Even if it's not professional experience.
Yeah, so it doesn't have to be a formal job or anything like that.
Exactly.
Just something to show you're familiar with the material. Okay, now what if they follow up with something like, what challenges did you face working with foam rubber and how did you overcome them?
Right. So now they're kind of digging a little deeper into your problem-solving skills.
Okay.
And for this one, it's really helpful to have a specific anecdote ready.
Gotcha.
So think about a time that you had to adapt or make a decision or troubleshoot an issue, even if it wasn't in a professional setting.
Okay.
And then you want to, explain the problem, clearly outline the steps that you took, and emphasize the positive outcome. So it's all about showing how you can handle a challenge.
Okay, so again, even if it's not directly related to foam rubber, it can still be relevant if it shows those problem-solving skills.
Exactly.
Okay, cool. Let's move on to a more technical question now. What is your experience with operating mixing equipment?
Okay, so this is where your mechanical aptitude comes in.
Okay.
If you have direct experience with mixing equipment, fantastic.
Right.
Highlight any training you have, certifications, specific machines you've worked with.
Hmm.
But even if your experience isn't an exact match, you can still answer this question effectively.
Okay, how so?
By focusing on your adaptability and your willingness to learn.
Okay.
So you can say something like, while I haven't worked with your specific mixing equipment, my experience with, industrial blenders or whatever it might be has given me a strong understanding of the principles of mixing safety protocols and quality control.
Ah, I see. So you're kind of bridging the gap between your past experience and the requirements of this new role.
Exactly.
Okay, that's a great way to frame it. Now, what about a follow-up question? Like, how quickly do you think you could learn to operate our specific mixing equipment?
Right. So they're looking for confidence here.
Okay.
You want to express your eagerness to learn and your ability to grasp new concepts quickly.
Right.
You can even mention if you've done any research on their specific equipment.
Oh.
So you would say something like, I've already familiarized myself with the specifications of your, whatever mixer it is, and I'm confident that with the proper training, I can be up and running quickly.
Wow. That shows initiative.
Exactly.
And preparation, too.
Right.
Okay, so you've really impressed them with your answer to that question. Now let's move on to one that gets at the heart of precision.
Yeah.
How do you ensure that the foam rubber is mixed to the exact specifications?
Right. So this is where you really want to showcase your meticulous nature and your attention to detail.
Makes sense.
You need to walk them through your process step by step.
Okay.
How would you measure the ingredients? How would you double check your work to make sure that everything is accurate? Think of it like following a recipe, but with much higher stakes.
Oh, definitely.
Right.
Yeah, you don't want a lopsided couch cushion.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's not just about knowing the steps, but
Yeah.
it's also about showing that you're committed to that precision.
Right.
Okay. What if they ask you something like this? Have you ever had to adjust a mixture that wasn't meeting specifications? What did you do?
Okay, so again, this is a chance to highlight your problem-solving skills. Have a specific example ready, preferably one that relates to mixing or a similar process. Explain how you identified the issue, what adjustments you made, and how you made sure that the final product met the required standards.
I see. So it's really about showing them that you can handle those real-world challenges that come up on the job.
Exactly.
These specific examples are really helpful. I think they paint a much clearer picture of your abilities than just talking about things in general.
Right.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit and talk about troubleshooting.
Yeah.
What if they ask you, how do you troubleshoot issues with the foam rubber mixing process?
Yeah, every job has its challenges, and they want to know that you can handle them.
Right.
So again, a strong anecdote is going to be your best friend here. Think of a time that you faced a technical issue, ideally one that involved a machine or a process.
Okay.
And explain the problem, your thought process, the steps you took to diagnose and fix it, and of course the resolution.
So you're kind of walking them through your entire problem-solving journey.
Like-
Okay, and again, even if it's not specifically about foam rubber mixing, if it shows those skills, it can still be relevant.
Right.
Okay, great. Now, what if they follow up with something like, what's the most complex problem you've encountered with mixing equipment, and how did you approach it?
Okay, so this is your chance to really showcase your expertise and your in-depth knowledge.
Yep.
Don't be afraid to get a little bit technical here,
Okay.
but make sure that you're explaining things clearly and concisely.
Gotcha.
They're looking for someone who can not only solve complex problems, but also communicate their solutions effectively.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
So it's a balance between showing your technical skills and keeping it accessible to someone who might not have the same level of expertise.
Exactly.
Okay, that's a great point. Now, this might be a good time to mention how RoleCatcher can be so helpful in preparing for these types of questions.
Oh, absolutely.
Their AI can actually analyze the job description and your resume and identify the key skills that you should be emphasizing in your responses.
Right.
It's almost like having a personalized coach in your pocket.
Yeah, it takes out a lot of the guesswork.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You don't have to wonder what the interviewer is really looking for because RoleCatcher kind of spells it out for you.
Right.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on to a question that explores your organizational skills. What is your experience with managing inventory and ordering supplies?
Okay, so while this might not seem directly related to mixing, it's really about ensuring a smooth workflow and avoiding production delays.
Yeah, okay.
They want to see that you can plan, organize, and keep track of materials, which is important in any manufacturing setting.
Right. You don't want to run out of foam rubber in the middle of a big production run.
Exactly.
So how would you approach this question if you haven't directly managed inventory before?
You need to think back to any previous roles where you had to be organized and detail-oriented.
Okay.
Did you manage a budget? Did you keep track of supplies?
Right.
Organize a project? Highlight those experiences and talk about how they demonstrate your ability to manage resources effectively.
So even managing your household budget could be relevant here.
Absolutely.
It's all about showing that you have those organizational skills, even if you haven't applied them in this specific context.
Right.
Okay, now what if they follow up with something like, what steps would you take to ensure that supplies are always available when needed?
So now they're really looking for you to be proactive and forward-thinking.
Gotcha.
You can talk about establishing systems for monitoring inventory levels,
Okay.
setting up reorder points, building relationships with suppliers to ensure timely deliveries.
Okay, so you're thinking ahead and anticipating potential problems.
Exactly.
Okay, those are all great points.
Yeah.
Now, before we move on, let's touch on something that I think a lot of people get tripped up on. How do you prioritize tasks in a high-pressure environment?
Ah, the classic prioritization question.
Yes, it comes up in pretty much every interview.
Pretty much.
So how do you handle it?
Well, they want to see how you handle stress, manage multiple deadlines, and make decisions under pressure. So think back to a time when you had to juggle multiple responsibilities, maybe in a fast-paced work environment or even a demanding personal project.
So even something like organizing a big event could be relevant.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And then you want to explain your system for prioritizing tasks, whether you use a to-do list, a project management app, or just a mental checklist.
Right. It's really about having a system that works for you.
Exactly.
Okay, and what about a follow-up question like, describe a situation where you had to reprioritize your tasks due to an unexpected issue. How did you handle it?
So now they want to see how flexible and adaptable you are.
Okay.
So describe the situation clearly. Explain why you had to shift priorities, what steps you took, and how you ensured that everything was still completed on time.
So again, it's about showing that you can handle those curveballs that life throws at you.
Right.
Okay, great. Now let's talk about a question that can really highlight your leadership potential. What is your experience with training and mentoring team members?
Okay, so even if you're not applying for a management role, demonstrating leadership qualities is always a plus.
Right.
So think back to a time when you helped someone learn a new skill or a process, even if it was just in an informal setting,
Okay.
and explain the situation, your approach to training, and the positive outcome.
So for example, even helping a friend learn a new software program could be relevant here.
Exactly.
Well,
And it's always good to connect your answer back to the foam rubber mixing role.
okay, how would you do that?
You could say something like, I'm really eager to share my knowledge and experience with new team members and help them become proficient in the foam rubber mixing process.
Ah, I see. So you're showing that you're not just thinking about yourself, you're thinking about the team as a whole.
Right.
Okay, that's a great way to tie it all together. Now, I know we've covered a lot of ground already,
We have.
but there's still so much more to discuss.
Definitely. Okay, so welcome back.
All right, we're ready for more.
We've talked about some of the questions you might get in a foam rubber mixer interview. And now I want to dive into some questions that are really going to test your commitment to safety.
Okay, that's super important in any manufacturing setting.
Absolutely.
So what kind of questions should we be prepared for?
Well, one that they might ask is, how do you ensure compliance with safety regulations in a foam rubber mixing process?
Okay, so it's not enough to just say, I follow the rules.
Right. You need to be specific and demonstrate your proactive approach to safety.
Okay.
So think about things like personal protective equipment,
Right.
machine maintenance, hazard identification, risk mitigation.
So you're really showing them that you're thinking about safety at every step of the process.
Exactly.
And if you have any safety training or certifications, this is the time to mention them.
Absolutely.
Okay, so you've really impressed them with your knowledge of safety regulations. Now, what if they follow up with a question like, describe a time you identified a safety hazard in the workplace? What actions did you take?
Okay, so this is where a real-life example is going to be really powerful.
Okay, so you need to have a story ready to go.
Right. And be prepared to give specific details.
Okay.
What was the hazard?
Uh-huh.
How did you spot it?
Mm,
Who did you notify?
right.
What steps were taken to correct it?
All right.
And did you go above and beyond?
Oh, like what?
Like maybe you suggested a process improvement to prevent that hazard from happening again?
That would show real initiative.
Exactly.
So it's not just about reacting to problems, but also about proactively preventing them.
Right.
Okay, great. Now let's shift gears a bit and talk about staying up to date with the industry. What kind of questions might they ask about that?
Well, one that they often ask is, how do you stay up to date with industry trends and developments in foam rubber mixing?
Okay, so they want to see that you're not just content with the status quo.
Exactly. They want to know that you're invested in your career and that you're constantly learning and growing.
Okay, so how do you show them that?
Well, you can mention any trade publications that you follow,
Okay.
online forums that you participate in, workshops, conferences, anything like that.
So even if you're just casually following industry news or engaging in online communities, that can still be beneficial.
Absolutely. It shows that you're interested and that you're staying informed.
Okay, now what if they get really specific and ask you something like, what's a recent innovation in foam rubber mixing that you find particularly interesting? Why?
Okay, well, this is where it really pays to stay informed.
Right.
You know, browse industry websites, check out recent articles, even just skim through the headlines of trade journals,
Okay.
and have a few talking points ready about new technologies or techniques that you're excited about.
So you don't want to be caught off guard.
Right.
But what if you do draw a blank?
Well, it's okay to admit that you don't know something.
Really?
Yeah, just be honest and say something like, I haven't had a chance to delve into that specific innovation yet, but I'm always eager to learn about new developments in the field.
Okay, so you're acknowledging your knowledge gap, but also emphasizing your willingness to learn.
Exactly. And then you can pivot to something that you are familiar with. Maybe mention a recent article that you read or a technique that you're excited to learn more about.
Okay, so you're turning a potential weakness into an opportunity.
Right.
I like that. Now, I know we've been talking a lot about specific questions and technical skills, but what about those softer skills that are so important in any job?
You're absolutely right. Things like teamwork, communication, problem solving, those are all essential, even in a technical role like this.
Right.
And the great thing is that a lot of the questions that we've already talked about can be used to showcase those skills.
Oh, I see what you mean.
Right.
So, for example, when you're talking about troubleshooting a machine issue,
Yeah.
you're not just demonstrating your technical knowledge,
Right.
you're also showing your ability to communicate effectively and collaborate with others to find a solution.
Exactly.
And when you're discussing safety protocols, you're highlighting your attention to detail, your sense of responsibility, and your commitment to creating a safe work environment for yourself and your team.
Absolutely. So even in a technical interview, it's really important to let your personality and those softer skills shine through.
Okay, so how do you do that?
Well, one way is to show genuine enthusiasm for the role in the company.
Okay.
Ask thoughtful questions, not just at the end of the interview, but throughout the conversation. It shows that you're engaged and genuinely curious.
I love that asking questions not only helps you gather information, but it also keeps the conversation flowing naturally.
Right.
Okay, now before we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I want to touch on something that we mentioned earlier, the power of AI in interview prep.
Yes, RoleCatcher.
Exactly. We talked about how their AI can help you tailor your resume and practice your answers. but are there any other ways that RoleCatcher can help you prepare for this interview?
Absolutely.
Okay, tell me more.
Well, one thing that I highly recommend is diving into their career guides.
Okay.
They have a ton of information about the foam rubber mixing role. They break down the responsibilities, the required skills.
Even potential career paths.
So it's not just about acing the interview.
Right.
It's about seeing the bigger picture of this career.
Exactly. And don't forget, RoleCatcher also has a vast network of resources.
Like what?
Industry organizations, publications, even related job titles that you might not have considered.
Oh, wow. So it's really a one-stop shop for all your career needs.
It really is.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground in this part of our deep dive. We've talked about safety industry trends, softer skills, and, of course, the amazing resources that RoleCatcher has to offer.
Right.
But before we move on to the final part of our deep dive,
Yes.
where we'll discuss some last-minute tips and strategies to really ace your interview, I think it's time for a quick break.
Okay, so we're back and ready to wrap up this foam rubber mixer interview prep.
All right, let's do it.
We've covered so much ground already.
We have.
But now it's time to really fine-tune our approach.
Yeah.
And make sure we're going into that interview with confidence.
Confidence is key.
It is. So beyond just answering the questions correctly, how can we really make a lasting impression on the interviewer?
Well, one way is to think about how you frame your answers.
Okay.
Remember, a foam rubber mixer isn't just about mixing ingredients.
Right.
It's about precision, problem solving, safety, quality.
All those things.
Exactly. And you want to weave those themes into your responses as much as possible.
I see what you mean. So even if my previous experience isn't directly related to foam rubber mixing, I can still highlight skills that would be relevant to this role.
Absolutely.
Okay, so for example, if I worked in a fast-paced restaurant kitchen,
Right.
I can talk about how I managed orders, maintained quality under pressure, and worked effectively as part of a team.
Exactly. Those are all transferable skills that would be valuable in a manufacturing environment.
Okay, so it's all about connecting the dots for them
Right.
and showing them how your past experience has prepared you for this new challenge.
Exactly. And don't forget to let your personality shine through.
Okay, so it's not just about being a robot and reciting answers.
Right. You want to show them that you're a real person, that you're enthusiastic about the opportunity, and that you'd be a good fit for their team.
I like that. Okay, now let's talk about the end of the interview. Those last few minutes when you have a chance to really leave a lasting impression.
Yes, always have a few thoughtful questions prepared.
Okay, what kind of questions should we be asking?
Well, you want to ask questions that show you've done your research
Okay.
and that you're genuinely interested in the company and the role. So you could ask about their specific foam rubber products, the commitment to sustainability, their approach to employee training.
So things that show you're thinking long-term.
Exactly.
Not just about getting the job, but about finding the right fit.
Right.
Okay, now what about salary expectations?
Ah, yes, the dreaded salary question.
Should you bring it up or wait for them to ask?
It's a bit of a delicate balance. My advice is to wait for them to bring it up, if possible.
Okay.
But if they don't, you can politely express your interest in discussing compensation at an appropriate time.
So you're leaving the door open without making it the central focus of the conversation.
Right.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, what about following up after the interview?
Always send a thank you note within 24 hours.
Okay.
Reiterate your enthusiasm for the role. Mention something specific that you discussed that resonated with you, and express your eagerness to hear from them.
Okay, so it's a way to stay top of mind.
Exactly.
And show them that you're really serious about the opportunity.
Right.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive.
We have.
We talked about specific interview questions, softer skills,
Right.
the importance of framing your answers strategically,
Absolutely.
and of course, the amazing resources that RoleCatcher offers.
It's a game changer.
It really is. So for anyone out there who's preparing for a foam rubber mixing interview, I hope this deep dive has been helpful.
I hope so too.
Remember, be confident, be prepared, and most importantly, be yourself.
Good luck.
And good luck to you